Hey there, folks. Welcome back to Chits and Cardboard. I'm John.
I'm Jeff.
And today we are interviewing one of the most renowned game designers and publishers in the world. I will do no introductions. I would not do him justice. I'll allow him to introduce himself. Mr. Jamey.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be here today. As you mentioned, I'm Jamey Stegmaier. I run a company called Stonemaier Games, and I've had the pleasure of designing some games for my company too.
Yeah. You have, and again, just absolutely fantastic games. If you don't know, we've been trying to actually get this in the works for a bit. Jamey was very quick to respond to us. We've been planning this pretty aggressively just to make sure that everything went smoothly and that we got the questions out. Today we are interviewing Mr. Stegmaier about his upcoming, or Stonemaier Games' upcoming game, Apiary, which is very exciting. But before we get into that, Jamey, I'd love to ask you a little bit about yourself, if that's okay.
Of course, absolutely.
Awesome. So, as we mentioned, you're a game designer and a game publisher. If my research is correct, and it might not be, you got your start designing games, making fan factions for Terra Mystica, or part of your design. Could you?
I have had fun doing that. Yeah, that wasn't quite the start, but that is something that I've done. There's the Atlanteans is a faction that I designed for them. That's on Board Game Arena now.
Awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Nice. Did that? I guess what brought that opportunity around, and how did that change or modify maybe how you approach game design? Because Terra Mystica is a pretty, I would call at least a bit of a hop, skip, and a jump from your usual, but also a game I could totally see you loving. So what was the inspiration or the background there?
Yeah, a couple different things here. I guess with Terra Mystica in particular, I got into modern gaming like many people, I think, with Catan, and then I went to Agricola, and then Fresco and Dominion, and then I was all in on a wide variety of games. And one of the earliest heavy games I played was Terra Mystica. I fell in love with it. I still love it, even with all the offshoots that they've done, like Terra Nova and Age of Innovation and Gaia Project. I still love Terra Mystica. And so a couple of years ago, the German publisher, Forland, that makes Terra Mystica, we work with them. They're our German localization partner. And Frank, who runs it, knows how much I love Terra Mystica. And he reached out and said, hey, Jamey, we're doing this thing where we're inviting fans to make factions. If you want to submit one, go ahead and do that.
That's awesome.
And so without any expectations, I made the Atlanteans just for fun to see how they would do. And it turned out pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, no joke. That's awesome. That's really, really awesome. So, again, we've covered that you're a decorated designer, publisher, reviewer. We'll stop talking about that individually. But given that you are such a large content creator across the board game space, maybe not just in game design, what is a piece of work that is non-game design related that you look back and you're really proud of, or that stands out to you?
Yeah, I like that question. I'll throw a couple different answers at you because there's a few different categories. Like you mentioned, people might know me. People might know Stonemaier Games for Wingspan. That's probably what we're most famous for at this point. Before that, we were most famous for Scythe. That was one of the games that I designed. I think we're still fairly famous for that game.
Absolutely.
And during this journey of publishing and designing games and running a company, I started a blog on StonemeierGames.com where I talk about entrepreneurship and crowdfunding, and I still write that twice every week. I've done that for 10 years now, maybe even 11 years. And then I also have my YouTube channel, which is geared towards game designers. So I guess I'm proud somewhat of the longevity of those. I think it's,
absolutely.
It's hard to start something. It's also hard to sustain something and to keep those things going multiple times a week for a long time while still running a company and designing games. I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah,
absolutely. You should be. That's a lot.
Off the back, you just mentioned your YouTube, which we'll link below, so our viewers can go check out if they haven't already. You've ran a YouTube series called My Favorite Mechanism, where you cover your favorite parts of certain games, usually their mechanics or some sort of implementation of their mechanics. Though I've realized, other than now your press runs on releases, you haven't really talked about many of your older, more foundational games. What do you think one of your standout mechanisms on one of your older games might be, or one of your your landmark games for Stonemaier?
So games that I published or games that were inspiring for me?
I would say games that you've designed and published.
Games that I've designed and published. Yeah, so in more recent years, I've gone back and I've been doing videos like for Apiary, for example, one of our newest game. I do a how to teach video. I do a tales from production where I pull out like prototype components and things that we tested during the pre-production process. I do a video about that. I do a video about like my favorite games to recommend it for someone who ends up liking Apiary. I have all these same videos for expeditions, but you're right. For older games, I don't have all those same videos. I think I do have like recommendation videos for most of them, but like the Tales from Production, those old components they were recycled or trashed a long time ago. So I don't have those things to show off anymore. So it's one of those things where I wish I'd realized that a long time ago, but I have fun doing those videos for newer games.
For sure. And I guess the follow-up to that was natural to me was, obviously you're doing all this coverage for the newer games. You have some for older games, not quite as much, but you have really kind of been a trendsetter as far as mechanics go, I think, at least for games that have come after something you've published. Maybe if you weren't the first place it was implemented the most creatively or most uniquely. Could you speak to maybe a mechanic or an implementation of a mechanic that you could think of that you're really, when you played it, you were just like, yep, that's the one in one of your games?
Oh man, that's tough because really I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants with all of our games. I'm proud of what we've created. I like what we've created, but a lot of the inspiration I get is from other games. You mentioned Terra Mystica earlier. Scythe's player mats were inspired by Terra Mystica's player mats. The idea of pulling things off a mat and revealing better income, better actions, lower cost, things like that. So a lot of the mechanisms are like that. Red Rising was directly inspired by Fantasy Realms, this idea of crafting a hand over the course of the game. So most of our games have a mechanism that is directly inspired by another game. So I don't know if there's, like in any of our games, I have favorite mechanism videos. There are things that I'm very proud of. I guess for Apiary, this is the most recent one, so that's been on my mind a lot recently. I love the idea of workers leveling up in strength and therefore improving the benefits of the actions that they take. That's a mechanism that Connie created, but I helped her refine it as a developer for the game.
For sure. Speaking of Apiary, you want to take the next one?
Yeah. So how did you originally come across Apiary? Like, did you already know Connie? Did she submit it herself? And like, was it in a game group or like in your game development circle, or like how did that come about? How did you two link up, and how did that kind of like first initially come to be, right?
Yeah. It's somewhat fortuitous, but also somewhat led by something that we do at Stonemaier Games, which is we hosted an annual event called the Design Day, Stonemaier Games Design Day. So this is a kind of a proto-spiel playtest event. Have you guys attended any of those types of events where you just go and playtest unpublished games?
We had one at a area near us, or a spot near us, called Freaky Wizard. That they do that every Wednesday or so, and we go occasionally.
Oh, cool.
Nothing more official or larger.
Yeah, a lot of game stores do them on like weekly basis. That's awesome. Yeah. This is one where it's about 100 people. We do it once a year, and cool. A lot of it, most of it is just like a goodwill event. Like it's just a fun thing to do for designers and people who like to play this games. But the side benefit is that it's also fun for us to walk around and scout out all these very creative games that are on the table that day. And right. Connie's game was one of them. I think Connie had let us know in advance, because I always ask designers who are attending, are you looking for a publisher, or are you just doing this on your own? Is this just for fun? Are you self-publishing? And Connie was one of the people that said, I'm hoping to find a publisher for my game, which may have been called Apiary at the time, might have had a different name, but it was a B-themed game. It was on the table. It was received well by people, and I scouted it out there and was like, I want to know more about this. And so part of our design process, early process, is not just looking at the games, but also talking to the designer, giving a little constructive feedback to see how they respond to that. And sure. Connie responded really well to it. And so we started that conversation, and she ended up then officially submitting the game to us a month or so later, and we accepted it.
Follow-up, again, this is a question we don't have written down, actually. I just thought of this on the fly.
Yeah.
What percentage, because you've mentioned historically that you and Connie, you get along great. You had a chat with her and about her game. How much of that relationship and you being willing to work with a designer comes down to how much you think professionally you would be able to work with a designer versus the game that they've created?
It's honestly a pretty big part of it. Like the game needs to stand on its own. I need the game to really entice me from the very beginning, for me to want to play it again, for me to want to go deeper into it, for me to want to spend a lot of time on it. Because we don't publish many games every year, I spend a lot of time on the games that we make. But like you alluded to there, a lot of this ends up being a relationship with another person, a professional relationship where we're emailing all the time about ideas, about she's throwing things at me, I'm throwing things at her idea, and just all sorts of stuff. And so I need to be able to communicate with someone. I need them to be a good communicator, to be able to accept constructive feedback, but also push back at certain times and say, oh, I've already tested that. This is what happened. This is why I'm not doing it. And there's a lot of mutual respect built very early with the people who I want to work with. And sometimes there are some red flags, and I realize this probably is someone who's going to be really difficult to work with. And
I bet, yeah.
we don't accept
really,
those.
Set idea of what they want and very specific and not really like willing to collaborate as much and stuff like that.
Board gamers, particularly.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
I respect a strong vision, but I need to be able to work with you. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So what was the thing that made you pull the trigger on Apiary? Was it the overall theme? I know after watching some of the videos that you've put out recently that the game has changed a lot since its original inception. So what was it that really like drew you specifically to Apiary? You just talked about Connie and everything. So what was it about Apiary itself? Was it more the mechanisms? Was it the theme? Like what? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's a couple different factors. One is the core mechanism of this idea that you're placing a worker, and the worker, as it's either getting bumped, I love worker bumping or retrieving, that the worker is getting stronger for future worker placements. I love that. I also love that on some of the actions, in the final version, all the actions, but early on it was just some of the actions, when you place the highest strength worker, a 4 strength worker, that you're getting not only a strong version of the core benefit, but also a special benefit that only that high level worker gets. And that felt really good playing those early prototypes. And so we ended up putting that on every single action, that there's a decision of when you have those rare 4 strength workers, which action do you choose? And the theme, I love the bees theme, but one of the first things I said to Connie was, I love this theme, but Honeybuzz also exists. Honeybuzz is a tile placement, engine building, worker placement game. It's designed by a friend of mine here in St. Louis. I can't do another bee themed game, but would you consider bees with a sci-fi twist? And Connie right away was like, yes, I would love that. Connie loves sci-fi stuff, and it helps solve some design problems that she had encountered by trying to make the theme too true to real life. Whereas if you add that sci-fi twist, it gives you a little flexibility. So once she added that, I was on board, she was on board, and we moved forward with it.
Well, you just beat us to our next question, which is where did bees in space come from?
Bees in space,
But I think we have a question that rolls perfectly off the back of what you just mentioned about the bumping mechanic, which is a lesser known fact about the game, outside of the bumping mechanic, which you talked about in your favorite mechanics video, was that you have 20 factions in the game, quite a few factions.
Yes.
I haven't heard too much about factions in specific, but I'd love to hear a bit about your favorite one and what makes them different and special.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've taught and played Apiary 3 times recently. Apiary has 5 starter factions, and so everyone that I've taught, I've given them a starter faction. And those are still pretty fun to play with. They give you a little puzzle of trying to place certain types of tiles right next to the faction hex. Meanwhile, I've started to play in the final published version, I've started to play some of the non-starter factions myself. And what was the one that I played the other day? I played one that wanted... that gave me a benefit and an opponent a benefit whenever they bumped me. And so it gave opponents an incentive to bump me, which was good because I was getting my worker back. It also helped them because they were getting something called Queen's Favor whenever they did it, and I got Queen's Favor. There's a lot of like positive player interaction elements like that in Apiary. So I think that's that element in general, positive player interaction, and that specific faction that gave me that positive player interaction, mutually beneficial. I really like that kind of thing in Apiary.
Awesome. Yeah. That's really cool. And thanks for the insight on the faction, because we'll look out for it when we get it for sure.
Yeah.
You want to take the next one?
Yeah, sure. So randomness and chance are part of most board games, and they're integrated in various ways. So we know that this presents itself in multiple ways in Apiary, the faction tiles, for example, and the exploration. So how do you feel that luck is a positive attribute and contributes positively in Apiary? And how much of a factor is luck? Is it much more like Euro heavy, or is it luck is much more of a factor there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it was something that we thought about a lot during the design process, because we were aiming for a middleweight game. It ended up being on the heavier end of a medium weight Euro game. And so we wanted less luck. We wanted less luck in the game. There's plenty of elements of variability in terms of like the carving tiles that come down the different factions. I would say that's an element of variability, although there's an element of randomness to which factions you get that you can choose from at the beginning of the game, and the different tiles that come out. You mentioned the exploration. That's one area where we had to test a bunch of different ways to do it so that it still felt like you were exploring someplace new, in that when you move the queen ship to a new space, you discover a new planet and you flip over that planet. Sure. But you also have a little control over what ends up being on that planet. And the other element of agency that you have is the bonus on the exploration token on that space. So at the beginning of the game, there are exploration tokens on each of those spaces that are face up. So you know at the very least that you're getting a specific benefit. You don't know what's on the planet underneath that. I would say the most random element are the seed cards. It's a face down deck of cards, but it also, we gave players a little bit of agency over that decision too, in that the strength of the worker that you place to draw cards determines the number of cards that you draw. You only get to keep one, but if you place like a strength 3 worker on the research action, you draw 3 cards and then choose one of those 3 to keep, the other 2 discard. So it gives you that choice there. Do you want to go completely random, put a 1 value worker there, just take the card that you get? Or
makes sense.
Eliminate that randomness or reduce it by placing a higher strength worker there.
I really like that.
I like that a lot. That's a good
really way to do it.
So our follow-up to that is, historically, we know that you are a publisher that tends to be very selective and meticulous, and also a bit of a trendsetter as far as games go. Now, you've mentioned you've built games off the back of maybe some pre-existing mechanics, but I think your games have been highly influential in the board game space. I mean, Wingspan started a whole trend of just straight up animal and nature games, right? Scythe started a whole, a 2.5 to 3x style, maybe even a 3.5x style wave of just a whole bunch of games that came out. What do you think Apiary contributes to the board gaming world in that sense? Do you think there's anything that the board gaming world will pick up from Apiary and just run with?
That's a great question. I don't even know if I appreciate you giving me credit for those. I can even still think of games that came before those, but you're right. Our games have had a big, especially Wingspan aside, they've had a big presence. I think they've inspired some people in some ways, and I love seeing that when people, I'm honored when people are inspired by our games. That's a good question about Apiary, because Apiary pulls a lot of these interesting, I would love for Apiary I love the bumping mechanism. Right. There are a few worker placement games that have that. I'd love to see more. I think it's a really neat twist on worker placement. Keeps the flow of the game going really smoothly. And the idea of worker strength, there are a few games that use that, but again, not a lot. So I like that idea of workers changing in strength and how that impacts the benefit. And then, actually, I do have one, maybe the answer I should have given from the start is that I really like what Apiary does, exploitation and colonization, because it doesn't do that.
Ask you about that,
yeah. This is something that we came up during playtesting. So instead of the general idea that you've seen in plenty of games where you go to a new place, a new planet, a new location, and you ravage it, you take from it. In Apiary, when you discover a new place, you pollinate it, you make it better for yourself, better for other players who use that, and at least the intent is better. Hopefully the occupants of that planet, if they're there, they understand that you're trying to help. You're trying to bring them water or pollen or whatever it is. So you're making that place better. I love that idea, that philosophical idea, that idea in games. I'd love to see that in more games as well.
Yeah, and you can tell, I don't know if this is accurate, but it feels very much like, I know you and Connie are very environmentally forward, and it feels very much like something you guys would have come up with. So that's just a great little personal flair on the game, if you will, I think.
Yeah.
So for our solo viewers, we've talked a lot about how players would interact in Apiary, how Apiary differs from other games and its class and some unique mechanics there. But for our solo players, how does the solo experience or automa you've built for the game compare to like a multiplayer experience, or how is it unique, or what makes it special? Because we know you put so much focus into the solo experience for your games.
It's a great question. I'm the least equipped person to answer it, though. All of my design and development is focused on multiplayer stuff because I really do trust the Automa Factory team to do the solo stuff. So I don't know much about it. That is a great question. But we do have the Automa rulebook on our website for anyone who wants to look into it to see how it works.
Sounds good. We'll link it below for everyone watching.
Okay.
Take a look. Awesome.
Thanks.
You want to take the next one?
Yes. Where are we at? Oh, there we go. So you've had what we think is an amazing From Nowhere press run surrounding this project. Having the designer Connie Vogel come on and join you for a top 5 games you like, if you like Apiary. I actually just watched that yesterday. and everything. It was a great video, by the way. Like, I really enjoyed it. It's such a unique way to give your viewers a feel of what the game will feel like, and from a gameplay perspective, before it's in hand. How did you guys come up with that idea?
So I've done those top 10 games, if you like, videos for a lot of our games, but it's only been fairly recently that and really I should have thought of this before, but thought of inviting the designer to join me for it. Sometimes I am the desiginer, so there's no one else to invite, but I do really love to elevate. Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
But yeah, I love to elevate our designers, and I'm trying to be more creative and more proactive in how I do that. And this was an opportunity to do that. I definitely never want to pressure a designer to do interviews or do, I don't know, appearances or do stuff like that if they don't want to. Not everyone loves to be on camera. Not everyone likes to do that. But more often I need to offer that, to put that out there, because as you said, I thought Connie was awesome in that video, and she's done a few interviews.
Oh yeah, she was great.
Yeah.
She was absolutely great.
Yeah, I just thought it was a really, or we just thought, I should say, it was a really unique way to give players a feel for what your game will be like before it comes out. That's something 100%. I've never really seen before. So now I think we're going to ask you a follow-up question that might be something you can't answer right now, but obviously this will be based on the success of the game. But is there any sort of expansion and or additional content in the works, in playtesting, in some phase of development that you could speak to?
In this case, honestly, I can say no, and that isn't a sign of us not supporting the game. It's just that we put everything we could into this game. We put every single tile that we thought of that actually worked and tested well. We put, 20 factions. Definitely didn't hold anything back.
100%. Yeah.
I could see us the thing that would fit the easiest in the box are more hive mats, because we do only have 5 of the hive mats. We tried to make each one feel a little bit unique in terms of the benefits you're getting when you're covering up these hexes.
Yeah, everything looks amazing.
Yeah, this is Quanchai Maria's art. Yeah, he did a wonderful job. But these we could easily put more in. That's probably my go-to if it is successful and if we do make an expansion. The inserts, it's a really good insert, but it is a little tight. There isn't a lot of room for more stuff in there because we packed it with stuff. So so nothing in the works, but I would love to do more with it if people want more.
Awesome. We have a couple extras here just to talk and or let the audience know about, but also kind of ask you about.
Yeah.
Firstly, we heard that with every purchase of Apiary, there's going to be a donation to charity. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the way we do it is for every person who is signed up for a launch notification of Apiary, we donate $1 to a few bee-themed charities or bee-related charities.
Nice.
So we actually try to intentionally separate that from the purchase, so people don't feel like, I'm buying this thing and I'm paying $1 extra to do it. Rather, we're doing it separate from that. It's just something that we're doing regardless of whether or not anyone ends up buying the game.
Wow, that's even better.
That's
wow,
really
I did
cool.
not know that.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then lastly, I wanted to give you the floor. We wanted to give you the floor just to, talk about Apiary, talk about when people can get it and what they can expect.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you can tell that I'm excited about this game. I really have had a blast playing it. Yeah, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it. And it's been a pleasure to teach. Like, that is one thing I've learned about publishing, that I want to publish games that I'm excited to teach, because
For sure.
I end up teaching our games more often than I am like playing them with everyone who knows how to play.
Right.
So I've had a pleasure teaching it. Just today, I actually filmed my video about how to teach Apiary to share with others my teaching method for it. And if people are interested in the game, it'll be available on our web store on October 4th. We have 4 web stores, so wherever in the world that you're watching this, we have a web store probably in your region that will be shipping to you in October. And that's one of the things that we do. Like, this isn't like a Kickstarter crowdfunding project where you need to wait 8 months to get it. If you buy it, you'll get it within a few weeks from us. It's also at Essen, so if anyone has the good fortune of attending Essen Spiel, we'll have some copies there, and it will be available in retail in late November, right before Thanksgiving, I think, or U.S. Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah. Well, Jamey, we really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for joining us.
I appreciate yours. Yeah, thank you so much.
This will be up on Wednesday for the viewers. We're interviewing you Tuesday.
Oh, awesome.
And a little known fact that we're now letting everyone know. You are currently atop a setup game of Expeditions we'll be playing right after this call.
Yeah.
So thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we hope to chat to you about your next game soon.
I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, thank you guys. Have fun with Expeditions.
Thank you.
Oh, we absolutely will.
We will.